Good evening. My name is Mike Munoz, Superintendent of Rochester Public Schools. Welcome to the new middle school public presentation, and we appreciate you taking your time tonight to join us and learn more about the new middle school and have the opportunity to provide feedback and ask your questions. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin from LHB, who's been our consultant that's been working with us on this project. Kevin?
Thank you, Mike. Again, as Mike indicated, there will be a time for question and answer. Feel free to submit your questions at any time, and we will be answering them at the end of the presentation. So the goal today is just to talk a little bit about the process, where we've been, where we're going, give you a little bit of information on the public information that we gathered and how we gathered it, which types of groups we gathered it from, talk a little bit about the design process that we were hoping to do and how that changed with the quarantine, and then actually look at the current site and building plans and approaches. We'll also talk a little bit about future schedule, and then we'll get to questions. So LHB, and so my name is Kevin Holm with LHB, and us and CRW, a local architectural firm, Jason Woodhouse, are the architects that are responsible for 4 new building projects that were part of the 2019 referendum. Those include the 2019 elementary school, the 2019 middle school, and reconstruction of Bishop, reconstruction of Longfellow. One of the main goals that the school board put in front of us was to make sure we maximized input through multiple groups, and also provided presentations to receive additional information. This presentation is one of those types of process that we put in place. Groups that we met with, school board, of course, the school district cabinet, project oversight committee, which includes some of the leadership from the district, design committees. There are 2 of those, one for the elementary buildings and one for the middle school. Planning and programming, that group is specifically designed to address the educational needs of the building and make sure that we are meeting both current programming needs as well as future educational changes and improvements. As we continue into this list here, facilities is exactly what it sounds like. Those are the individuals that make sure these buildings are open and operational for students each and every day. The last item, user groups, number 7, there's actually about 15 to 20 of those. Each one of them has anywhere between 3 to 8 people from the district. They include a group for kindergarten, for example, a group for 1st and 2nd grade, a group for 3rd and 5th. When you talk about the middle school, it has an art group, a PLTW group, a music group, a Phi Ed group. And so we made sure that each one of the space types within the building had a group for question and answer. When we talk about project structure, finding common ground is one thing that we would like to do. Anytime you mix educators with architects, there's some different terms that are in there, some different acronyms. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we get people out so they can see what other options are out there from the design side of things. So each one of the design committees was taken on a tour of 3 buildings, and LHB likes to make sure we get a diverse look. So they were 3 buildings by other architects. We did not do any of the designs. So elementary did 3 and middle school did 3 middle schools. From this point, each one of the groups that we had listed on the previous slide, we did a goal setting exercise. And after the goal setting exercise, we actually did a Menti, which is a word cloud, and asked the question, how should the building feel? And asked for 1-word answers to that. And you'll kind of see the outcome of that here shortly. The next element that we did to make sure we identified things properly is what we call space programming. This is literally just an Excel spreadsheet that has each space type within the building on that spreadsheet with the quantity and the square footage. We then go back and identify a user packet for each one of those rooms so that we can identify equipment, number of students, educational approach to make sure that each one of those spaces will be equipped as is needed by the staff. The last item is the block process for us to get feedback and input from the design committee. We were able to achieve this on the 2019 elementary school, which is at the Schmidt Park site. Due to the quarantine, we were not able to do this for the middle school, so we changed it to us developing 4 distinct and different building plans and relying on the design committee to kind of give us feedback on each one of those and move forward. So you'll see a little bit of that process when we get later on in this presentation. As I mentioned, LHB and CRW are the architectural firms. Knudsen is a local construction manager and construction firm that has been hired by the district to manage not just these 4 projects, but other projects from the referendum. And then in addition to those team members, we have 6 local engineering firms that are providing assistance from structural, civil, and even some mechanical, electrical. The projects will be publicly bid, and so hopefully the local contractors will come out in force to bid on the projects, and as well as be successful in landing some of the projects. These next few slides, I'm not going to read each word on here. I'm going to pick out some of the high points. Again, this is the feedback or the information that we got from the goal setting exercise as well as the mentee exercise. The second to the bottom bullet point on this slide talks about energy efficient and sustainable. The district has made the commitment that the new buildings will be the most efficient buildings within the district at their space type. So the elementary will be the most efficient as an elementary, and the middle school will be the most efficient of the current middle schools. Educational goals, obviously first and foremost, these are educational facilities. And so the big piece here, as I mentioned before, is to make sure that the spaces meet current educational needs and are flexible enough to meet future needs. Safety and security goals. Unfortunately, this is a major focus for schools in this day and age, and so that is a high priority across the board. This shows itself both in the form of passive observation to help with the day-to-day activities, as well as the one-time scenario that we hope never happens at our buildings. Community goals. One thing that we hear loud and clear, not just with Rochester, but with other schools, is to make sure that the buildings are accessible after hours, or that major portions of the buildings are accessible after hours. And so you will see that in these plans and site as well. Fiscal goals, I want to make sure that we're being responsible. Energy efficiency is one way, and building materials that will last and reduce maintenance is another way to approach that fiscally. Environmental goals beyond energy. IAQ is indoor air quality. You'll see that as one of the items. That is just one element of what is known as IEQ, which is indoor environmental quality. Indoor environmental quality addresses acoustics and natural light, as well as other elements. Acoustics have become a increasing focus at the education level. They affect the ability of students to hear, which affects their ability to learn. So that is kind of the new piece in education, is to make sure that spaces are acoustically designed. Access to natural daylight. That goes all the way back to the turn of the last century, 1900s, that a study was done to see about factory improvements and delivery of work. Those same types of studies have happened at schools, and access to natural daylight improves test scores and retention, as well as alertness. Functional goals, showing up here. One of the items that I would address here is the gender inclusive restrooms. We are pursuing that. Based on the current codes, we will have to apply for a variance, which the district intends to do, but the goal is to have gender inclusive restrooms, but above and beyond the other elements that you see on the sheet. So when I talked before about the mentee exercise, the image on the right, the colorful image, are the words that were used to identify how the building should feel. With this type of a program or piece, the larger the word, the more times it was used in the group piece. So you'll see safe, welcoming, bright, inviting, warm, open, all showing up as larger words on this piece. The image on the left, building goals. Again, what we did is we took all of the building goals that were given to us, entered them in, and then the word size, again, is based on the frequency that it was used. Block process, these two images are images showing that block process with members of your community. The image on the right was a site exercise where everything was just two-dimensional laid out and talking about adjacencies and access. The image on the left, you can see the scale size blocks there, and what would happen is each group would provide direct feedback of why they organized their building the way they did and why they stacked the spaces the way they did. Again, we were not able to do that for the middle school because of the quarantine. And so what we did is we provided 4 options. Those 4 options kind of, and the discussion of those led these 5 items to kind of float to the top. Access for after-school activities and community access. Special ed resources needed to be distributed within the classroom pods. Natural light, you'll see, shows up twice, not just for classrooms, but throughout the building. And then the next item is the 200 student pod or neighborhood concept. So I'll touch more on that 200 student pod neighborhood concept when I get into the actual floor plan itself. This image that you see here is one of the most current images relative to the site plan and the location. The district request for annexation of the Hart Farm site was declined by the City Council, and therefore they are pursuing annexation of this site, which is north of 65th Street Northwest. And the intersecting road in the southwest corner, or the lower left-hand corner of this, is actually 55th Avenue West. So this site allows the building and the site to access city utilities and tie into the systems. It also provides a good access road off of what will be a future collector. One of the things to point out here is the 65th Street Road was planned for improvements in the future. The city has offered to expedite those road improvements to kind of coincide with the school construction. When we look at this image and facility here, the long gray shape on the right-hand side is the bus drop-off. That is positioned where it is because of the bike path, walking path that is in the south of 65th Street. So if you look at that aerial image, you'll see kind of a gray path that was drawn in, but it ties to an existing gray path. The green spaces to the east of the bus loop are a large green field for soccer, lacrosse, football, whatever you might favor, and then a softball field to the east of that. The multicolor image in the middle is the building, of course. The gray block to the south of that is the parking for parents, as well as the parent drop-off. And the gray loop on the left-hand side of the building is special ed pickup and drop-off, as well as building services to that side of the building. I would also like to note that the loop on the left-hand side and the bus on the right-hand side provide access for emergency vehicles such as fire and ambulance to the further portions of the building. The building itself is a 3-story building. Each one of those yellow lines on this image that you see is a 2-foot contour line, which means that at each one of those lines, the grade raises or lowers 2 feet depending on which direction you're going. I'll explain a little bit more why that's important when we get into the building design. The 4 images you see here were designed by 3 different architects within our team, and they were presented to the design committee to get their feedback on pros and cons of each and which one they would like us to move forward to, or if we had to start from scratch. The option that was selected is the image in the upper left-hand corner, and that is predominantly because of the 200 student wings. So that is the only option that showed the availability of pods or neighborhoods in the form of 200 students. So the education wing is a 3-story, 2-wing aspect to get 6 wings for the 1,200 students. So again, the upper left hand is the image that was presented. The lower right hand is where it has evolved based on feedback from the different user groups, as well as additional feedback based on site and other driving factors. The main entry to the building, so I'll differentiate here a little bit on which floor we're on. So we're on what we call the main floor, which is the at-grade entry from the parent drop-off and the parent parking lot, as well as visitor parking lot. The brown area in the lower right-hand corner is the main office and the secure entry for the building. So anybody coming to visit the building would have to enter through that area. Based on the security approach for buildings nowadays, all doors on the outside or the perimeter of the building are locked, with the exception of this vestibule. The interior doors are locked on this vestibule, so if somebody comes into this building, they have to go into the main office to check in and register before they are allowed to go into the rest of the building. Other items to note on this floor plan or this level, the pink spaces to the left or the west of the brown space are the music rooms. The aqua space directly north of those is the auditorium. And so the auditorium is designed for 500 seats. Which is the equivalent of an entire class of 400 students plus any staff and or paras that would be involved with that class. Directly to the north of that, the light brown area and the cream color space, that is the kitchen serving and cafeteria commons. Once you get to this portion of the building, you'll see the east wing or the right wing and the west wing or the left wing, which have the light shades of green and the dark shades of green. Those are the classroom pods that we've mentioned that account for a 200 student capacity. The locker bays are directly outside or away from those. So what we end up with is a quiet area within each wing. You can see there's furniture placed within each one of those wings. Those are group learn spaces. So what that allows the teacher to expand outside of their classroom into those group learn areas for project use or just an expansion of their classroom. The other pieces that are associated with those group learn spaces are small group rooms, which are directly adjacent to the large group in those classrooms, which allow for students to gather in a group of 5 to 6 students, work on a project in a completely visible way to the staff, so that passive observation piece of security, but also be in a sound isolated manner so that they're not disturbing other students. From the main floor, we can go up or down. I'm going to start by going down. So at the lower level, you will see the blue gymnasium space, which is at the, again, as we call it, the lower level. All of these classrooms will still have natural daylight. The main bus entry is that cream space just north of the gymnasiums. So if you are a student that's riding the bus, you are getting dropped off near those doors and walking in those doors, at which point, once you're inside the building, you can walk straight ahead and go to your lockers, or you can walk up the stairs and go to the upper level or the cafeteria common space. If your lockers are on 3rd floor, you can either walk through on this level to the main stair towers and go up, or you can go up 1 floor, walk through the cafeteria commons area, and then go up to get to the 3rd floor. Again, the educational spaces here are very similar. On each end, what you will see in the other spaces of blue are 2 locker rooms, 2 gender neutral type changing single-use rooms, as well as a fitness area. The mustard colored or gold colored area in the middle is the media center. So what you see there is a variety of space types for small group and large group use. The upper level, again, if you came in on the main floor or the parent entry, you would go up 1 story and you would be at the top floor of the building. At this story, you see that you have the green spaces, again, in the wings, which are the general classrooms and science classrooms. You'll also see the dark green, which are the special ed spaces, which have been fully integrated into each one of the wings. You'll also see on this level pink, which designates the art classrooms, as well as the kiln and the storage area for the art. Other spaces you'll see on this level are the gray, which are the mechanical rooms, providing ventilation throughout the building. Upcoming meetings for the schedule of the middle school, June 15th, we will have a final plan review with the middle school design committee. So any types of comments or changes that came out of the staff meeting that was prior to this or this meeting will be incorporated, as well as other changes from the user groups. That information is continuing to update the plan as I indicated before. SD is schematic design. This is the point when we would like things to quit moving on the building. So we have all the spaces identified, and at this point we would be going to the school board, providing a presentation that includes the floor plans, some exterior imagery of the building, as well as a budget that shows that we are on budget. So the intent is that we will do whatever we need to for our design experience and materials to get us to that budget phase before we present to the school board. Construction start anticipated October of 2020, so not far away. We've got quite a bit of work to do. And then project completion is fall of 2022. And here's where I will address questions. I will go through the questions, and if there are floor plan questions, I will jump back to the floor plans after we've addressed the questions. What is the plan for 65th Street and associated timeline? 65th Street is planning to be built out to a major collector, is I believe the terminology that the city is using. That will include sidewalks and bikeways. And again, the timeline, the intent is that that work would start the spring of 2022. And hopefully the work in front of the middle school would be completed by the fall of 2022. Next question, when is the middle school likely to be finished? I just answered that. It'd be fall of 2022. Was there any delay with the location change? We're doing everything we can to make sure that does not affect it. It has made things a little bit tougher on the design team, I'll admit to that. As well as would Bolton and Mink, who is our civil designer on this project. Final difference in cost between the southwest and the northwest. That information is more about the operations than it is about the first cost. And then percentage of Southwest voters who voted yes. I don't know that there would ever be any way to gather that level of information. Why student pods of 200 students? There's a couple ways to look at that. The ability of 200 students is both from a class of 400. So you're able to break each individual grade level of 400 up into a subgroup of 200. This building design also allows for it to be broken up into 3 400 student schools or 2 600 student schools. So this is where we talk about the flexibility of educational delivery within a building. Next question regarding the site plan map. What does the area outlined in pink represent on the far west property line? So the part of the purchase agreement would be to make sure that there is access to the farmlands to the north. One of the pieces that the city requested is that there would be a conversation or a set aside for a right-of-way or a street easement to go up through to the north side of the site. So that is property that the district would not be able to use in the future and would be held and saved for both transportation easement as well as probably some of the utility easement type stuff. Next question. RPS doesn't have a community school middle school. What features of this building would you allow this school to become a community school if that became possible? Right now, my understanding is that the community schools or the middle schools are used as community resources, both from a gymnasium standpoint as well as a pool and other elements. There are also community resource rooms within the buildings, and that is probably one of the pieces I should have indicated is there is a community classroom in this building, both for kind of a food and kitchen type approach as well as other general education type pieces. So there is a lot of conversation about providing access and amenities to the community. Will there be a carpet in the music rooms to help with acoustics? That has not been fully vetted yet. There will not be carpet in at least 2 of the rooms, being choir and orchestra. It is possible that there would be carpet in the band and the music exploration. However, we do have a acoustical engineer on the project that will help us with that. The big difference between these music rooms and other music rooms within the district at the middle school level is that there is a lot more volume within the space, and the current materials absorb sound much better. So it is highly likely that we will not need carpet for the acoustics approach. Can you show which areas of Rochester will attend this new facility? The boundaries have not been fully identified yet. Those will be coming up in the near future as the school board looks at the boundaries for the fall of 2022 school year. I believe the intent is to have that information completed by the fall of 2021 for parents. What is the overall student capacity of the school? That is 1,200. The existing buildings are around 1166 for a capacity. Some of those actually exceed 1,200 right now due to the student load, and others were slightly below. When will boundary changes be finalized? We just mentioned that fall of 2021 is the intent for the students' locations to change for the fall of 2022. Please explain the pods of 200 students. Will any changes be made to accommodate social distancing? At this point in time, we are not making any wholesale changes to building architecture based on social distancing. The district has over 27 schools within the district, and to try and accommodate social distancing will be more of a district-wide approach than trying to address it with the 4 current buildings. When is the first year kids will occupy? Fall of 2022. Now I can see that some of these questions maybe came out before I indicated them. Does completion by fall of 2022 mean that? Yes, it does. It does mean that the students would be in this building fall of 2022. What is the green area on the site map to the north of the bus stop area? There is a combination of green space, meaning unmaintained grass areas to the north. There will also be areas or indications that are maintained and could be used for outdoor classroom areas in the grassy areas. What are the plans for providing homeowner privacy to the homes south of the site plan, as well as the single property to the west? The plan that you're looking at may not look very large, but once the building is on site and the parking is there, you'll see that the separations are pretty strong or pretty far. The other piece that I would mention is that the right-of-way for 65th is going to get considerably wider. I don't remember if it was going to be a 95 or 120 foot right-of-way, but that alone provides a 120 foot buffer between the homes and the school site itself. Will 7th graders have the option to stay at their current school if boundaries change for them? There was some preliminary conversations about this. That will be a determination or a conversation that the board will make when they do the final boundary adjustments in the fall of 2021. Did you say that the auditorium has stadium seating? The auditorium has 2 different types of seating. When you walk in, you will walk in at grade. There will be a handicap accessible slope that will go down towards the stage, which will give the effect that the stage will feel like it is 30 inches above you if you are in that front row. So the feeling of a raised stage. If we go back up to that entry level, excuse me, from that point, you would have handicap accessibility to the surface of the stage. So if you are an individual in a wheelchair or pushing a walker and you need to go across the stage, you would have that ability to do that. Also from that level, you can turn and go up at the back of the stage, or at the back of the auditorium, and that it would be the closest thing to stadium seating. That would go up at a pretty strong rate, so that we can get storage underneath the seating and provide some really good sight lines from the back of the auditorium. Looks like that is the end of the questions, so I will go into the plan real quick and just talk about a couple of the items that were in there. I think I'll start off with the site plan first. And I'll stay in this view mode so that you can see my cursor as I point to things. So if you look at this site plan, it actually shows the property line of the homeowners plus their setback to the south of that. So that property line will basically mirror to the opposite side of 65th. That is the right of way that will be required for 65th. So everything of the school will be distance or beyond that portion of 65th. I think one of the questions was, were the green areas here? And now that I see it on plan, the question was probably, what is this? That is a stormwater retention. So anytime you create impervious surfaces on a site now, you are required to make sure that that site still drains at the pre-developed rate. And so we will have more than just that one. We will have multiple ponds on the site to collect and hold the water and slowly release it as if it was a undeveloped site. I'm going to jump to the floor plan here real quick. The question was the auditorium seating, and I'm going to zoom in here so we can look at it a little bit closer. So when I mentioned the entry to the auditorium, this would be the main public entry to the auditorium. You come in at grade, no slope, no stairs, which brings you to this elevation. Handicap accessibility to the stage occurs along both edges. So you could do the actual walk across the stage. From this point, if we reset ourselves to here, this line indicates the start of the slope down to this point. So this is a 30-inch drop down to here. So if you are sitting in this front row, you have a raised stage and you have good sight lines back to this point. From this elevation, you can turn and go up the stairs back here. This seating is at a much steeper slope. We'll maximize that slope to maximize space usage underneath for storage. And so the entire auditorium from front to back seats 500 individuals plus, and that is for a full class plus staff. And I think that answers the questions that we already had. I will go back to the questions now and see if there are additional added. Is there space on the property for additional buildings and or outdoor stadium? The site itself is a 40-acre site plus or minus. Actually more closer to the minus now that we've had the right-of-way requirements from the city, both on the south and the west. A middle school by Minnesota Department of Education recommendations is a 37-acre plus site for this building. 37 would be the minimum that they recommend. And so this is intended to be only a middle school site. The question about an outdoor stadium, there is no current plan to put an outdoor stadium on this site. Those fields are as much for Phi Ed and community use as anything. Let's see, where will all kids here go to John Marshall? Again, that'll be part of the boundary piece. My understanding to date is that the high school boundaries will not change at this point, unless driven to do so by the capacities. But at this point, there is no intent to change the high school boundaries. The middle schools will split up according to the current boundaries to go to the high schools, or at least that is the current plan. Can you explain how the gender neutral bathrooms will work? Will these be the first of those in the district? And I will do that in plan a little bit. And it looks like that was the last question. So now I will go back to the floor plan, zoom in a little bit more. So the image that you see up here, this red image, is a mirror or a copy of what's happening on the other side. So the way these are set up, instead of these being toilet partitions that are just partial height, they are full height walls with full height doors. So each toilet is an individual stall. And then when you've finished, you come out here and you have the hand wash stations at this location. The way the code currently sits, we will designate one of these as boys and the other as girls. Once we have either approval of the variance or the code changes, both of them will be considered gender neutral. So either gender would be able to use any one of these stations and then come out and wash their hands. As part of the control aspect here, obviously you can see that there are no doors at these locations, so the visual control of this is there. Plus there will be windows above the wash basins so that you will be able to see through that. So that is the other approach to make sure that the passive observation of those spaces works for safety of the students. Will gifted services be at this site? There is a gifted and talented program identified within the space programming. And I believe the intent of the school district or the school board is to provide a gifted and talented curriculum at each one of the sites. And I think in the case of your district, it's called highly gifted. I don't see any additional questions. I'll just kind of close up and then see if any others come in. So I want to thank you for your time tonight and appreciate the feedback and the questions. The middle school, as we indicated in the previous schedule, has a couple more design meetings, and then the schematic design submittal or presentation to the school board in July. Again, Mike Munoz would normally, Superintendent Munoz would normally give a closing session, but he had to go to another district event here, and so he was unable to do that. So thank you very much again for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you more on the other buildings and projects.